Loud enough? Well, for those of you who know me, you might be surprised that I'm not here to talk about machine translation. So I'm actually quite a passionate user of machine translation, so you'd think that I'm here to talk about that. But I have another passion, that's Translators Without Borders. So if machine translation is my day job, Translators Without Borders is my evening job. So I'm here to talk to you about what we're doing with Translators Without Borders right now. I hope you find it interesting. I also want to talk about what we're going to do in the future. That's really important to me because you're all in the forefront of translation technology, and for us to get to where we want to get to in the future, to scale up our activities, we need translation technology. So let me talk, first of all, about what we're doing now. Translators Without Borders, or Traducteurs Sans Frontières, as we're known in French, was created in 1993. I got the idea when my translation company, which at the time was called Eurotext, we're now called L'Accelera. So when Doctors Without Borders, or Traducteurs Sans Frontières, or Médecins Sans Frontières, contacted us with a paid translation, I said to them, hold on a second, if we don't charge you for this, can you do something with the money to help your mission in the field? And they said, sure we can. So that started our work with Translators Without Borders. Since then, we've saved NGOs many millions of euros by providing free translations. We translate now about 1 million words a year. We're translating more than that, but just slightly, and we want to scale up a lot. We want to do 10 million words by next year. We want to start doing 100 million words a year. The need is absolutely there. These are just a few of the NGOs we work for. Planet Finance, which does microcredit, UNICEF, AIDS organization, Action contre la faim. You'll know them in Haiti as Action Against Hunger. Their shirts were all over the television screens. Of course, Médecins Sans Frontières, our namesake and really our inspiration. They're a wonderful group. Ashoka, another great group for supporting initiatives in the developing world. These are some of the NGOs we work for. When I talk about the need that we're trying to meet, these NGOs are mostly located in the 11th arrondissement of Paris. We're not even covering the NGOs in the whole city of Paris. So there's a huge need out there. I think there's something like 15,000 NGOs in the world. We translate for just a handful of them. How does Translators Without Borders actually help NGOs? We help them in a couple of ways. First of all, we help save their money by translating for free documents that they need translations, whether it's for internal use, training volunteers, press kits, that sort of documentation where normally they would pay for it. So we help save them money that they can put towards their mission, and that's something we always ask before we take on a translation. Will you use the money to extend your work in the field? We also help them in another way, though. We help them in getting their message out. Doctors Without Borders in particular is very, very committed to reporting on something that's going on in the world. So whether it's a famine in sub-Saharan Africa or human rights abuses in Russia, their mandate is not only to provide crisis intervention, but to help get the word out on some of these forgotten crises in the world. So when something is going on, Doctors Without Borders will get the report out, we'll translate it to shine a light on some of the darkest corners of the world. So that's another important part of the work that we do, not only to save them money, but to help them in their missions directly. We're mostly working in crisis intervention for the moment because a lot of our NGOs or non-governmental organizations are involved in crises. When the earthquake hit on January 12th, unfortunately that wasn't our first humanitarian crisis. In the first few days of the crisis, because some of our NGOs, such as Doctors Without Borders, Action Against Hunger, were very, very involved in the rescue efforts. In fact, Doctors Without Borders had 60 people in Haiti before the earthquake. And so there wasn't much time for writing reports. The documents we translated tended to be short documents like this to just let the world know what was going on. But what Haiti was a game changer for us. It not only galvanized us within the organization of Translators Without Borders, but it also galvanized the translator community. We have been flooded with candidates wanting to work for us. The first weeks of the Haiti crisis, we were getting 1,000 applications a week. Now, Translators Without Borders is an organization that normally runs on 500 volunteers max. So 1,000 candidates a week was really swelling our ranks, and in fact, it's completely overwhelmed us. But it showed us that not only do we have the huge unmet need of NGOs, but we have the overwhelming support of the translation community. So we want to scale up our activities. We're doing 1 million words now, and when I say we, I mean the incredibly dedicated volunteers who might do their translations at night after their working day is done, when they've put the kids to bed. They're all professional translators. They've all been tested. It's really important for us actually to test the translators, because some of their work, as I said, is crisis work. It can go out immediately without any edits. So it's very important that the translators be professionals. And we also vet our NGOs, of course, to make sure that the work that they are doing is important work, not politically motivated. So those are the two things that we vet. So we're doing 1 million words a year, but we can do a lot more. The need is there. So let me tell you my vision of how we need to get there, because, in fact, our big bottleneck is not the NGOs. There are so many. We're even, to be honest, even afraid to get the word out, afraid to do any publicity, because we'll be inundated. As I said, we're working for a handful of NGOs, and they're keeping us busy all the time. We're not bottlenecked on volunteers. There are literally hundreds of thousands of translators in the world, and really a significant amount want to help. The bottleneck is project management. Since 1993, my translation company has been supporting the project management activities, but that's where it blocks up. And I started thinking about that when Haiti hit. I think of it as hitting. But when the crisis in Haiti really hit home, I thought, we have to scale up. So where do we need to scale up? We need to scale up on the project management bottleneck. And as I started thinking of solutions for making project management faster, I just all of a sudden I realized that we don't really even need to be in this process. I'm not talking about the kinds of needs that a company might have, but for Translators Without Borders, I started asking myself, what are we doing in this process? We're phoning translators, we're asking them if they could do the work, we're sending them the work. But Translators Without Borders are all professionals. We've vetted them already. So what we want to do is create a worldwide internet portal so that the translators who've been vetted, the NGOs who've been vetted, can work together so that a job can be posted and a translator can pick it up without us needing to have anything to do with the process except in terms of troubleshooting and finding new NGOs to serve. So that's our vision for the future. We have a very simple process right now with ProZ, and they've made us a job portal, which is quite exciting. But I think we can make a worldwide portal on the web where translators and NGOs can come together without need of intervention. We have some absolutely successful self-managing communities like Facebook, Kiva.org, Wikipedia. Those are all self-managing communities, and I think that we could do something very, very exciting. So our goal is to create a web-based portal where translators can interact with the NGOs who need their help. But while we've got that, I want to go a little bit further. No, I want to go a lot further. And for this, I really need your help. As Joseph was saying, access to knowledge is a big issue. Now, I think our translation portal, which can make it easier for volunteers to work with the NGOs who need their work in European languages, can also make it easier to translate knowledge into the languages of the developing world by translators of the developing world. Because that's one thing that's missing right now, is an easy way for people to translate knowledge. Crowdsourcing is a big part of it. In fact, our translations are frequently crowdsourced because they're in such a hurry, because the NGOs can't wait, and because the community works together fairly well. So I don't see why we couldn't also open up the platform to developing languages and start developing some of the wonderful educational, medical, scientific, and technical information that's on the web. Level the playing field for the developing world. Start making knowledge available for them. This is just an example. In fact, Wiki Junior is a relatively small project, but they're basically developing textbooks. So imagine if we could start developing those textbooks into Swahili or Shona or Vietnamese and really leveling the playing field, bridging the information gap between rich and poor countries. Because information poverty affects 4/5 of the people on this planet. 4/5 of the people in this world, those in the poorest countries, lack the basic access to the information, the medical, technical, scientific, educational, nutritional information they need to live healthy and productive lives. And this is a translation issue. And since it's a translation issue, that means it's our issue. There's no one else who's going to come forward and solve this problem. It really is up to us as a community. So translation for the developing world is not a nice to have, it's a must have. Because access to information is one of the most important ways of breaking the cycle of poverty. It does that by bringing educational information, scientific information, best practices. It helps people develop new technologies that solve their own local problems. So access to information is not a nice to have. It's absolutely essential, but it's a translation issue. So that information is available. We're not going to ask every new local language that comes on the net to start recreating their own bases of knowledge. There's so much is there. Access to knowledge fights hunger. It fights hunger by increasing agricultural needs, opening up economic opportunities, training people, giving them new options. Access to knowledge saves lives. The head of UNICEF said that during his tenure, 80% of the children and adults who died needlessly. They died of treatable, preventable illnesses simply because the knowledge of how to treat them wasn't where and when it was needed. Unless I'd be taken for a cultural imperialist, I'm not saying let's find a way to translate our knowledge for the developing world and not the other way around. Because in fact, there's so much local knowledge. I'm not just talking about the richness of human diversity, but I'm also talking about the richness of knowledge in those communities. Because there's no way right now that a community, this is a community in Borneo where I spoke last summer, there's no way right now that the inventions that they come up with, the solutions that they come up with local community, with to their local problems, can reach people in other communities with the same problems. So not only do we have a lot of scientific and technical knowledge and medical knowledge that people want and need, but we also have a lot of local knowledge that we want to share in our direction. There's a revolution happening. The revolution is internet connectivity. If we want to change access to knowledge, we need 3 conditions. We need internet access, and that is happening more than you may know. We also need the devices, and that is also happening. That's part of the revolution. 50% of Africans now have access to cell phones, and their cell phones are getting smarter. So they're going to become capable of carrying more and more information. New devices are coming. And lest you think, well, what is a $700 iPad going to do for the developing world? Think of when the MP3s were first invented. They first came on, they were horribly expensive. Now you can get an MP3 player for €6. So I think that what we're going to see is devices that are capable of carrying more and more information for less and less money. So we have more people coming online. But right now, what are they going to find there? If you start looking at the amount of knowledge that's available, and even a big language like Swahili, not to mention a smaller language like Shona, there's just pitifully little information. And even people who speak another language still learn better. Children learn better when they can speak their own language. So we need to provide an easy portal to facilitate local experts, local translators, local journalists and scientists and doctors, and tap into the diaspora. All of the people from the developing world who've come, and doctors who've set up practice in London, or nurses in Vancouver. We can tap into those people and make a crowdsourced environment where they can actually help us translate information for their own communities, the communities that they grew up into. This is and they want it. The desire is so strongly there. These are kids doing you may have seen this before, kids doing their homework by light. Now, when I talk about the devices that I hope will be available for $6 to $20 that will contain a lot of knowledge, those devices also need to take local realities into account. Only 1 in 4 in Africa right now has access to the electricity grid, so we need technologies that can deal with those realities, rugged, resisting heat, and with their own energy source. I don't know how many of you listen to TED Talks, but quite often at the end of a TED Talk they have their wish, their TED Talk wish. So this is my translingual wish. My wish is that those of you who are in the hardware industry will start thinking about developing devices that can be used to transmit knowledge that we can help translate for the developing world. For those of you in the software side of things, I hope you will continue to develop technologies that will help people communicate regardless of what language they speak and where they live. For those of you in academia, I hope you will start training up translators from the developing world. There is a huge body of experts there. We're not tapping them. I think we need them to be into this community. I think they need to be at our conferences. They need access to our technology. And so I ask the academics in this room to participate in that, offer scholarships, and involve them more in your work. For those of you in publishing, my translingual wish is that you will make more open content, educational information available. For those of you in websites, that you will think about federating multilingual knowledge. And for Translators Without Borders, my wish is that we actually will get our portal that will help create a self-managing community to translate, to support NGOs, whether they're working in Western Europe or in the poorest countries of the world. Thank you very much.